Well, we have a special shipper update on FreightWaves now today. Steve Ferreira, he is the CEO of Ocean Audit. He joins me. Steve, thanks for coming here to Chattanooga. Talk about what is Ocean Audit for our viewers out there who don't know what this is.
Emily, thanks for having me. You know, one of the things that I did with Ocean Audit, creating it some 25 years ago, is I wanted to have a platform for CEOs, CFOs to recover overpaid ocean freight. I come from the carrier industry myself. I've lived in Hong Kong, China, Prague, and in my experience, 12 to 15% of all ocean invoices are defective, and clients just do not do a proper job recovering those expenses. So Ocean Audit, in summary, is a contingency-based audit company that provides refund recoveries to the import-export community. Currently, we're proud to have 15 of the Fortune 100 as clients.
So the big thing right now are the Chinese tariffs. We've been talking about the trade war for more than a year, and there doesn't really seem to be an end in sight. And so a lot of supply chain and financial leaders are having to think of ways to help with these expenses. What are some ways and major themes, I would say, that shippers are using to invoke cost control discipline when it comes to the tariffs?
Sure. We've put a couple on the screen, and I think a couple that are really relevant, Emily, are the whole concept of forward loading. Some clients are trying to push back on the tariffs by either re-engineering or retooling the products or having them come from a third country, and then certainly try to find a way to recover funds that can help offset the tariffs. And I prepared a few examples for the audience to see today with Walmart and Target. I think one of the things that's really interesting about Walmart as an example, you can see here they made a really big move in August and September to forward load or bring us as many containers as possible before the tariffs hit. But now you can see come October that the numbers on the containers have severely diminished because their warehouses are full and they've brought in what they wanted to bring in. Now, that was Walmart's strategy. If you look at Target's strategy, 85% of Target's containers come in from China. And so Target took a contrarian strategy where they asked their vendors to hold the price levels, and therefore you can see they were relatively flat in July and August, and then they did take a big hit downward, maybe even more severe than Walmart. Now, one of the reasons why is that Target's chief merchandising officer asked the Chinese vendors to hold the price levels on the actual products coming out of China. I don't know if that was successful because the radical plummet of Target's September and October containers seems to indicate that maybe Target wasn't able to hold the prices as best they were able to, as they had planned.
You mentioned ocean recovery. I know Ocean Audit, your company, specializes in that. Talk about what ocean recovery is and how you could help with that.
Well, sure. Over 15% of ocean freight has a correctable defect. There's a 3-year federal law where clients can go back and recover ocean freight refunds. And typically, most clients can achieve a 1% return on their total 3-year sea freight spend. Now, if you look at a client like Target, although duties and China tariffs are different than ocean freight recovery, one of the things that I bridged as a thought leader on the process is to help clients like Target offset a little bit of the tariff. So if you take Target as an example, it's possible that with their spend, they could achieve potentially a $3 million recovery on ocean freight refunds, which they can then use to bump up against offsetting their China tariffs. So I think a way to think of it for the readers is taking the tariffs from, say, a 10% level down to a more reasonable yet high, like 9.7% level. So we think that that's one of the really big advantages that Ocean Audit's been able to give clients in this particular 301 tariff season.
You showed a great example with Target. You mentioned it a little bit ago. Before we get to the IMO 2020, I thought this was interesting. If the Chinese manufacturers aren't willing to work with people to offset some of the costs, what are some other ways they can offset these costs? And when we talk about costs, do we have any idea what these costs of these tariffs actually are?
Well, the cost of the tariffs are billions, but one of the things that's been really advantageous to a lot of the clients, a lot of the importers, and you know, Target's done it to a little extent, but there have been some really remarkable stories in the trade where clients have moved entire supply chains out of China to places like Vietnam, Cambodia, West Asia, India, Pakistan. And so it does take a long time to read the tea leaves in terms of political and economic ramifications about how to move those supply chains. But when you get into the position of a Target where you're really locked into China, you have to really start to look at cost cutting in other ways. Reduced ocean freight refunds, other transactional measures where perhaps you give more volume to the Chinese manufacturers to leverage the pricing downstream.
Well, obviously we'll be talking about the trade war for a while, but also looking to the horizon. We've been talking here at FreightWaves about IMO 2020 a lot. Shippers and, well, exporters, and importers need to be talking about this. The sooner the better, because it's coming. Talk about that.
It's a remarkable subject, and it's one that's just cascading on top of the Chinese tariff issue. Most experts, myself included, tend to think that IMO 2020 come January is going to result in 5 to 7% to 9% increases in ocean freight. The one thing that's remarkable about IMO 2020 is there's no set parameters in terms of how it will be executed, how the invoicing will be, how the pricing will be. Now, I know from experience as a leader in the trade that we're going to see months and months of disjointed invoices, overpayments, overcharges, and it's going to wreak havoc on clients' AP, finance, and control and supply chain velocity and volatility and payment processes. So it's something really your audience should look out for in terms of better cost controls.
And I know you had another slide to go with this, and you were talking about the BCO invoice accuracy. Talk about that.
Right, I think that one of the things about BCO invoice accuracy, Emily, is that typically for every 100 invoices, 10 have an overcharge. Clients only catch 5 on their own accord. That means 5 will reside in that bank account of the NVOCC or the steamship line forever until some corrective action's been put into place. So people like myself and other leaders in auditing would attempt to recover these overcharges to repatriate our clients' treasury with funds that properly belong to them. But I think one of the things about IMO 2020, you should potentially looking at a $10 to $15 billion increase in freight costs across the board in the Trans-Pacific alone.
Yeah, this is big, and this is something we've been talking about here at FreightWaves. We'll continue to talk about IMO 2020. Steve, thank you again for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Of course, you're watching on YouTube, so hit subscribe. Also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We hope everyone has a great Tuesday.